It is Friday after all, hey, so let's bring you some delicious piece of information. As part of its commitment to improving diversity, equity and inclusion in the African entertainment space, Paramount Africa has published a study titled Reflecting Me, Representation on Screen. This is aimed at exploring how people feel about representation on screen through diversity. For more on this, we're joined by Paramount Africa's Vice President, Monde Twala. Mr. Twala, sir, so good to see you. Thank you very much for availing yourself.
So good to be here. Thank you for having me.
So when we talk about, maybe before we get into the research that was conducted, when we talk about inclusivity or representation, and we hear it a lot, right? Representation matters. What are we talking about essentially?
Listen, I think from a Paramount Africa perspective and a Paramount Global perspective, you know, what we're always trying to aspire to and try and achieve and work towards is ensuring that storytelling, content that we produce and project and distribute across the world is inclusive. You know, that means that we are mindful. It's about mindfulness. It's about leaning in on celebrating our differences, celebrating diversity, and being more inclusive and welcoming different cultures, different, you know, markets. And of course, you know, we are a global business. We are a US-based business, but we operate across the continent, whether it's LATAM in Brazil, in Europe, Eastern Europe, Africa. We are here in Africa, we're in Johannesburg and Nigeria. And for us, it's all about how can we aggregate content that is more representative of diversity and leans in on diversity as and inspires the power of content. And obviously can also inspire our communities, can also inspire storytelling to the world, African storytelling to the world.
Let's lean into the research that was conducted, and you spoke to a number of people representing me, reflecting me, I beg your pardon, representation on screen. How was the research conducted?
The research really was part of our diversity and inclusion task force, which we put together early in 2019. And that was really at looking at being a global entertainment business that produces content across different markets. How can we continue to leverage, diversity? How can our content, our own content that we produce, be more inclusive of different languages, different cultures, and how that then applies to Paramount Africa is in really what we do, you know, whether it's across any of our brands, whether it's Nickelodeon, whether it's MTV Base, BET, Comedy Central. It's also about how do we continue to tell South African stories that can appeal to a global audience. And that was key in conducting the research and enabling us to be more informed and connect with audiences in terms of what they want to see and how they want to be perceived and how they can be and use our platforms, obviously, for them, how can they leverage our platforms to be more expressive about whether it's gender issues, whether it's female-led content. You know, we just recently invested quite a bit in female-led reality series. So whether it's Kanye Mbao's reality show, Busiswa, we very much partner with talent to be able to then elevate the narrative. And what do we all want to see? We want to see ourselves on television. We want to consume content that inspires us, that connects with us emotionally. And I think that's what's behind the inspiration behind the study.
I think there's something to be said about that, because in the past 2 years, especially during the hard lockdown, people from all over the world were consuming content that came from the African continent. But quite interestingly in the research, when it comes to Nigeria, the respondents there saying they want to see themselves. I thought that was quite interesting, because we've got Nollywood, you've got a lot of representation when it comes to the entertainment space in Nigeria.
I think that sentiment is really, it comes from the ideal and the idea that we want to project our culture. You know, Nollywood, yes, has grown as a franchise. We consume already Hollywood. Sure. We consume a lot of Bollywood. We consume a lot of telenovelas in this market from South America. But how do we now, as a continent, as creatives, as media business players, how do we now start telling our own stories to the world. You know, let's not wait for someone else to tell our story. We need to tell our own stories. And I think that's partly what came out of the research. More and more Africans want to see themselves. They want to see their stories resonate everywhere. We've just produced, in the last year, during the pandemic, you know, the last 2 years, BET did Isono, which was a telenovela, which is now broadcasting in France. It's the #1 telenovela on BET France. You know, so we're now looking at doing more and more of scripted content that can be global, you know, especially now with streaming being, you know, a trend. You know, we want to make sure that we are ahead of the trend in terms of African content for the world.
There's also this conversation about the return of looted African art. So I do wonder whether, you know, people from the continent actually consume African art, but do we also consume entertainment that we make? So these telenovelas that you speak about that are doing really well overseas, how are they faring here at home?
They're doing amazingly well. You know, I always say to my colleagues globally, you have to win at home first. You know, you have to produce culture. You have to lean in on your heritage, because that's the beauty about us all being different. That's inclusivity. You know, that's what diversity and inclusivity is about. It's about enabling and giving opportunity to different cultures and leaning on heritage and the diversity within African heritage. A Nigerian is different from a South African, from a Ugandan. Within South Africa, look at amazing diversity we have, you know, language-wise. You know, that our language base is diverse. Our location base is diverse. You know, so we need to lean in more on those elements of culture and heritage and project outward. You know, the diaspora is hungry. African Americans want to connect with the continent. Afro-Caribbeans want to connect with the continent. This is the cradle. And I think it's really, this is informing our strategy as a business in this very robust competitive market. This is a strategy to really be able to take African storytelling to the world and project a colorful, diverse rainbow nation with multiple cultures, multiple storytelling opportunities. You know, why should we all do Shaka Zulu? Why can't we do Mushweshwe? You know, we have such rich, amazing stories that are built from culture, and the world is hungry for that. The world is hungry right now. You know, you look at some of the streaming platforms. We're all consuming content from Spanish language content. You know, Bollywood, etc. Sure. You know, but why can't we now create our own, you know, culture-based entertainment content for the world? And I think this research is going to really be that game changer that does not only just entertain, but also informs and educates and expose and creates better awareness and sensitivity and mindfulness in terms of the importance of Africa in the global space is hugely, hugely powerful. And that's how we're going to lean in as an entertainment platform.
It's a great time to be alive and to be living on this continent. But what do you say to, you know, small production companies and people who are desperate to tell their stories, but they're not able to plug in with people like yourselves, I guess?
I just say, tell your own stories. You know, today I tell people all the time, you know, as an entertainment platform and with the amazing brands that we have, I'm not competing with television channels. I'm competing with the consumers. Consumers are generating their own content. You look at streaming platforms, online platforms like YouTube. You know, you look at social media. People are producing their own content. User-generated content is becoming more popular. Hence, I always try and just tell young, new, fresh producers, write and be bold and tell your own story. Kick the door down because you matter. And that's what this Reflecting Me study is trying to do and trying to cultivate. It's the culture of fresh new storytelling opportunities that we can leverage on and create a new dynamic space and opportunity for business, for culture, and entertainment. And I think that's exactly what, as Paramount Africa, we're going to try and achieve.
Those two words, so powerful. You matter. Thank you very much.
You matter.
Thank you so much for coming through on this Friday. Monde Twala, Paramount Vice President. Thank you very much for availing yourself.